So welcome along to Around the World in 80 Events, hashtag The Conversation. This is me, Matt Lamb, and this is Mary Lynn live currently in Sacramento. Mary Lynn, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll get straight into it. Firstly, tell me a bit about you and a bit about Sacramento and a bit about what you do.
Well, I'm the volunteer coordinator for the city of Sacramento. So we have volunteers in all the different departments and programs. And normally we have many folks out helping to run various events and sports activities and after school programs and all kinds of things. We normally have about 400,000 hours of volunteer services donated every year to the city of Sacramento from our volunteers that are directly connected to our own programs. So my job has been to help get volunteers for all those different things. But things have pivoted a little bit. Part of what's going on now is that I'm supporting our Emergency Operations Center for the city and county of Sacramento. And so part of what I'm doing is having to pivot and move the volunteers over to other activities. So that's a whole nother part of the discussion I'm sure we'll get into.
So let's just jump straight into that then. The citizens that do really engage with your volunteering program of the city, how are they now responding?
Well, we're affected, of course, by shutting a lot of things down. So, for instance, our zoo is closed. Our museums are all closed. So a lot of things where we would normally be having our volunteers engaged, those are shut down. A lot of our festivals and fairs are closed. Tournaments that we were having for seniors, all shut down. So what we have is we have some idle volunteers. So the challenges have been to try to maintain that group, to try to keep them interested and involved. A lot of people are trying to create these virtual events or activities that are happening to try to shift and make sure that they're keeping their volunteers active in some way. One of the other things they're doing is they're doing training online for the volunteers. So they're shifting things into some orientations and trainings that are all virtual to try to make sure that they're bringing people on and continuing to do that and onboard people without having to stop that process. Because we know at some point we're going to open back up and we don't want to be in a point where people have drifted off from us, right? We want to try to maintain that. What I've been asked to do is to pivot to get volunteers to support different types of events and activities. So we're dealing with a lot of food access challenges right now. So for instance, our food banks are just phenomenally getting food out. So they're doing like 3 times as much food or 4 times as much food in some cases as they normally would be doing. They've been hit with the fact that a lot of their volunteers are older, and so they're not actually allowed to come in, or they also have business people and school groups that would normally be coming in to support, and they're not doing congregate sorts of things. So what we're doing is we're trying to bring other volunteers in that are younger and are perhaps have time on their hands, can come in and support too. So we're kind of pivoting everybody.
So let's talk about that pivot then very quickly. Where does that pivot go? Like, because, the young volunteers, they might be like, well, that was just during the health pandemic. How do you keep them? And also, how do people that were disengaged come back engaged again?
I think part of it is trying to maintain some engagement with them now. I think that's one of the big problems is you can't just kind of let them float off. You have to keep in touch. And I think a lot of the organizations are trying to do that. Virtual and remote opportunities that maybe they've had, but they haven't really expanded too much. I think we are going to lose a lot of people. I think because they're used to coming in and doing something together. I think we have to make sure that we're being safe, space between each other. Be clear about how we're doing, what kinds of cleaning or something is being done. And I noticed that a lot of businesses are doing that, where they're explaining how they're doing what they're doing to keep things safe for people.
What do you think the 3 challenges will be moving forward within volunteers?
Sure, I think some of it is actually just fear. I think people are going to be fearful about getting together. So I think that has to be alleviated in the community. It's somehow the issue of coming together in whatever way, whether it's to volunteer or to be at an event or something. I think fear is going to be one of the, they've been sitting back a bit. They've been thinking about how do I take care of my family and take care of me. And so there's been a real sort of internal focus, because I think one of the things that people are doing is they're reevaluating what's important in their lives. lives right now. And so, hopefully your volunteer opportunity is important to them, but you're going to have to kind of reconnect that in some way and express your mission. Because sometimes I think in the volunteer world, we get so busy that the mission of what you're doing sometimes is, you're just not communicating it terribly well because you're so busy with the detail. Selecting things a little more carefully, and they're going to really be a little careful about it when they go back into the world, because they're not going to be feeling they're going to have reevaluated what is important to them. And I think we're going to do a lot more things virtually. I think that people are expecting it now because everybody's been on Zoom, right, and Google Hangouts and go to webinars and all these other platforms that are out there.
Just on that point then, how do you think the volunteer movement can even be part of a virtual platform?
Well, I think there's a couple ways that we have to think about it. One of them is I think we have to stop expecting that people have to all come into a room to be oriented. And I have often thought that that was just a ridiculous thing that we keep imposing that on people, because it is a barrier. It's a time barrier for one thing. So when you're back in the office and you're running about and doing all these other things in your life, it's a barrier when you have to be at an orientation at 2 p.m. If you have it online and it's recorded or it's a webinar, you can start and stop as you need to. Why aren't we doing that? But I think you're going to see a lot more people expecting us to have that as an option. And honestly, I don't really think that there's a reason why we don't have that. I think just people haven't taken the time to sit down and create those. But I think people are going to expect more online interaction and the ability to do things on their own time.
They're used to going into a room. They're used to having a cup of tea with a biscuit. They're used to then signing 100 forms before they've even left the room for the training. So just to go back onto the digital element, in 2016, your volunteer program won the award for digital strategy and impact. So now, how, due to the fact that, technology is now everywhere, as you said, what are you going to see in the next year or two? What you done in 2016 that won that award?
Well, what we won for was actually being able to increase the volunteer hours. And what we did a lot was to bump up our social media. So we have 3 platforms that we're very active on, which is Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And then we also have Pinterest that we sort of play around with a little bit as well. But we also do an online newsletter that goes out to between 10 and 16,000 subscribers. And that actually is a great way to just let people know right away what's coming up. Websites, doing things on our website and making sure that the information is available and easy to find, and that you can click right into it and sign up, and there you are. And I think that that's one of the things that has been helpful in moving forward and getting a lot of younger people involved, is to make it kind of quick and easy, just like Amazon. That's what people's expectations are, is particularly those who are in the slightly younger. And but I think everybody's expectations have been moving that direction. And so I think moving forward, I think we have to look at some of our other process. What can we do that makes sense, making that available more readily?
Digital isn't now just for during this time, but actually will enhance your program and your ability to impact the citizens of Sacramento.
And I think staying connected better too. And virtual events of different kinds, I think, are going to be helpful. It's because people's time is valuable, and whenever you host something, like whenever you host an event or a meeting or something, you do find that there's always a crowd that doesn't show, right? You get for some event, but if you can do it online, you may get it may be a better turnout, or it may be that you get people to attend it that wouldn't come to the regular event.
So we spoke about challenges. So very quickly, what do we think the opportunities will be?
I think that we will be reopening in different ways, and I think that we will see volunteers assisting with sports events and other activities. We will have more. We're going to have other things set up so that maybe there's a plastic screen between you and the other person, and you're passing something back and forth and wearing gloves. I don't know what it'll be, but I think we'll go back to a number of the things that we have normally done. But I think you will see people, wearing masks. And
which, a lot of sporting events, you will be high-fiving an athlete. You'll be giving them a medal across their neck. So do you think actually there could be a point that volunteers are going to have to be told and clearly instructed due to safety, do not do what you used to do? And do you think they'll go, well, I'm not involved then, because that's what I love to do. You know, like
Right.
I'm putting that medal on that runner's neck.
That's
No, you
right.
can't.
Well, I think it's going to be tough because I think that part of what, like you say, what people like is the connection to the people, and I think we have to figure out ways to make that connection, especially if you're in something where people are, like you say, you're putting the medal over the person's neck and you're hugging them or you're shaking hands, all these things.
Obviously, with a population of 508,529
Yes,
on the last
definitely.
census, that possibly not even just the fact of giving back, but do you think people are actually going to appreciate their community more because they've had time to appreciate that outside the front door is as far as they can go in a lot of circumstances? We'll now have the opportunity to do so much more. So in 5 years' time, we're actually going to see an overload of everything because of this.
Well, that could happen. I mean, I think that people are really going to want to get out and about and do things. I think people are feeling pretty hemmed in. Fortunately, we have good weather, so people can get out and bike ride, and they can walk, and they can hike around and things like that. And we're allowed to do that. We're actually allowed to fish, and we're also allowed to golf. So the golf is allowed. So they put in different things where you can only ride one person in each cart, and they have to keep distance, and they've got a whole little process going. And so I think that I think people will really want to get out more and will probably really appreciate those gatherings and things.
Overall, what I think is very clear is, the training element will certainly be directed now by technology to allow people, because to allow people to do it in their own respect. I think that the connection people will want the connection beforehand, and and even more after this health pandemic. So
Does that sound good?
Is there anything else you'd like to add on before we finish up?
Well, I think I'd be really curious to hear your points of view too, in terms of what you feel is going to happen. So I'll be curious to see, after you talk to everybody, what you come back with in terms of the gems.
Listen, it was honestly, Marilyn, that was fantastic. You've given me some brilliant stuff to work on and to think about. I've actually got my world here as well. So like, you're currently there.
That's right.
Right in Sacramento. Well, listen,
That's right.
From me in Glasgow, there we go, in Glasgow, I'm even on the map. From
there
me
you
in
are.
Glasgow to you in Sacramento, Marilyn, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Matt. Take care.
You too. Look after yourself. Bye-bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that great chat of volunteer management with Marilyn in Sacramento. Join for more conversations next time.